Hey, I'm getting ready to read chapter 6, part 2 of Trouble According to Humphrey. The title of this chapter is called The Difficulty with Art. In the evening, Mr. Battelle came home from work. He was a kind man in a gray suit, and he said I was a handsome gerbil. Art was paying attention for once, and he told his father that I am a hamster. Mr. Battelle nodded and said, A handsome hamster. Do you know how to take proper care of him? Art showed him the guide that goes with my cage whenever I go home with students on weekends. Within minutes, Mr. Patel was reading the booklet cover. Very interesting, he said. A few minutes later, and several pages later, he added, We must plan some stimulating activities for Humphrey. Stimulating activities? I like the sound of it. I jumped on my wheel and started spinning like crazy. He's certainly active for a nocturnal creature, Art's dad commented. Can I take him to my room? I don't think you should move that cage around too much. I'll hold him. Art opened the door to my cage. And you won't let him get away? I understand hamsters are quick and crafty creatures. Art's dad was a pretty smart guy. I promise. Art picked me up and held me with both hands, gently but firmly. Come on, Humphrey, wait till I show you my surprise, said Art, heading down a long hallway. In some ways, Art's room was like most rooms I've seen. A bedroom is basically a square box with windows and a bed. Sometimes there's a desk or a dresser. Art's room had all those things. In another way, his room was unlike any room I'd ever imagined before because just every single inch was covered with tracks and bridges and houses and trains. Not big trains, but very small trains. There were open cars and passenger cars and cars I don't even know about because I'd only seen trains in pictures. There was a big circle of track in the middle of the room with a bridge going across it. Inside the center of the circle was a town with houses and trees. On the edge of the town stood a red and white tent and a big wheel. What do you think, Humphrey? Art asked as he cupped me in his hands and he let me look around. It's unspeakably sensational. See that lake? Art pointed to a pool of actual water near the big wheel. That's Lake Battelle. Blazingly brilliant, I shouted. Ever since I got the train set for my birthday, it's all I can think about. I'm going to have a town and an amusement park. See, there's a Ferris wheel, and I'm going to put in a roller coaster and maybe a zoo. Isn't it great? Great, 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 I squeaked. It was great, but now I knew why Art wasn't paying attention in class and why he was doodling all the time. This was what he was thinking about. I could see why this world he created was fun with a capital F. Maybe this fun was also causing Art to fail, which didn't seem fair because you should be able to have fun without failing. Paul wasn't failing, but he didn't act like he was having a lot of fun either. This is all very confusing for a small hamster, but when a human has a problem, I always try my best to help, especially if that human is a friend. Later that night, I was back in my cage and Art was back in his room, probably working on his train layout. I was spinning on my wheel when I heard Art's parents talking. We have to do something. His grades are falling every day, Art's mom said. Art's dad thought for a while and replied, I don't understand it. He's always been a bright boy. What does the teacher say? I lost my spot. She suggested a tutor. I think it's a good idea, even though I'm not sure all the tutors in the world would make Art pay attention in class. It's that train, Art's dad said firmly. I think we'll have to take it away from him. Once he started with that, his grades went down. I stopped spinning. It made me sad to think of Art losing the train that he loved so much. Art's mom sighed. I'd hate to, but we may have to. The Pattels sat in silence for a while. Then Art's mom said, Paul Fletcher is coming over tomorrow. Miss Brisbane suggested he might help Art with his math. Paul, isn't he a grade below Art? Sure is. I guess he's a math whiz. He comes into Art's class for math every day. I hope it helps, said Art's dad. Those two were best friends when they were little. What happened? I don't know. Art seems to think Paul's too young for him to play with. But he's only 7 months younger. The Patels both chuckled about that. Soon they went to bed and the house was quiet. And I had all night to think of a plan. Somehow I had to put two and two together to get Art back on track with his math and with his old friend Paul. "Look who's here," Miss Patel announced the next afternoon when the doorbell rang. Paul stood in the hallway holding his math book and a notebook. "Come on, Art." Miss Patel took Paul's coat and hung it in the hall closet while she asked him how he was, how his parents were, and how his school was going. Finally, Art came into the room. He wasn't smiling. "Hi, Paul." "Hi, Art." They stared at each other for a second. "Come say hi to our house guest," said Miss Patel, leading the boys toward my cage. I jumped on my ladder and squeaked, "Hi, hi, hi." "It's Humphrey," said Paul. He was almost smiling, I think. "That's right. I guess you know him from coming into room 26 for math," said Miss Patel. "And speaking of math, why don't you boys settle in the kitchen to study? I'll fix some hot chocolate." Neither of them moved. "Art," said Miss Patel, "take Paul to the kitchen." Art grudgingly led Paul to the kitchen and out of my sight. I could hear Art's mom say, "Here's your hot chocolate, guys. Now you know how to study. Now you know how to study together." "I thought we could work out a few problems," Paul said. Art didn't answer. I heard paper shuffling. I heard Paul and Art mumbling, but it was pretty clear there wasn't all that much happening in the kitchen. Mr. and Mrs. Patel were down in the basement. I heard her say something about organizing the boxes. There were occasional sounds from the kitchen. Once, when Paul made a suggestion to Art, I heard a piece of paper being crumbled up. "I don't get it. I'm not like you, some kind of genius." Paul quietly said he wasn't a genius. He just liked math. "I hate numbers. They're just squiggles on paper. They don't mean anything," Art burst out. Then things were very, very quiet. I had my plan, but it was risky. The last time I left my cage, I'd caused some big trouble, especially for my friend Miranda. Still, I felt I had to take a chance in order to help Art. After all, he was my friend, too. So I opened my good old lock that doesn't lock, grabbed on the table legs, and slid down to the nice soft carpet. I quickly darted under the table to make sure that no one was around. I could hear the boys in the kitchen, and I hadn't heard Art's parents since he went down in the basement. I took a big, huge breath and scampered across the living room, turned left at the hallway, and ran straight toward back to Art's room. Thank goodness the room was open, or my plan would have ended right then and there. The maze of train tracks looked much different from a hamster's eye level. There were many tracks going this way and that way, and a string of colorful cars attached to a big shiny engine. My plan was a simple one, as most good plans are. I thought the boys would eventually find that I'd gotten out of my cage. They'd search for me and end up in Art's room. When Paul saw Art's amazing train layout, they'd start working out together and remember how much they liked being friends a few years ago. Art would be willing to let Paul help him with math, and his grades would go up. We'd all live happily ever after. Except Miranda, of course. I would still feel guilty about getting her in trouble. Maybe it wasn't such a simple plan after all. It was taking the boys a long time to discover that I was missing. I realized it could take them hours, or possibly they'd never notice I was missing at all. I yearned for my comfy cage that offered me so many things to do, like spinning on a wheel, climbing my tree branch, swinging from my ladder, or dozing in my sleeping hut. I was feeling sleepy right then, and I saw the bed that was exactly my size. It wasn't really a bed, just an open car on the train. I scurried over to see it, and I was easily able to pull myself up the side and settle down inside. Yes, it fit me perfectly, and what a thrill it was for me to be sitting in a train for the first time in my life. Ahead of me was a tank car made of gleaming metal. Ahead of that was a passenger car with tiny plastic people looking out the windows. In front was a powerful engine with a whistle on top of it. I was too excited to take a nap. Instead, I stretched my paws, and as I did, I accidentally hit some kind of switch or lever. I didn't have time to think or see what it was because when I touched it, the train lurched forward and began to move around the track. Once I realized I was going on a train trip, I decided to sit back and enjoy it. I loved the way the train's wheels went clickety clack on the track and the way it traveled in a wide curve past the general store and the tall pine trees. The train picked up speed, and I could feel the breeze in my fur. Everything went dark, completely dark for a long time. At least it seemed long. A tunnel. I hadn't seen that coming. When I came up to the other end, the train veered left and began to climb up, up, up. I could look straight down on the roof of the general store and the tops of the tall pine trees. That art was certainly clever to be able to build a bridge. The train stopped climbing and moved across the straight center of the bridge. The pine trees looked small from what felt like the top of the world, but straight ahead what I saw was trouble. As the train started down the incline on the other side of the bridge, the bright, shiny engine tumbled off the side, pulling the passenger car with its tiny people off the edge and the shiny metal tank car. My heart skipped a beat as I realized I was headed for a huge fall, and I was about to land right in the middle of Lake Patel. That's the end of chapter 6, but we have the Humphreyville Herald here. Humphrey spends weekend with art. Classroom pet makes its first visit to Patel's house. Chapter 7 is called Test Distress, and we will hear it the next time. Bye for now. Hope you have a great rest of your day.